back up.
Okay. Okay.
We're just a second. Sorry, guys. All right, whenever y'all are ready.
Francisca, you need to increase the size of the print on that thing.
Just have one side of it on. Yeah.
Is that better?
No,
No.
I mean, it's on one. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah,
There
it's
you go.
getting better. A little bit
Now
more.
I can read it. A little bit more.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right, whenever you're ready, you're live on YouTube.
Okay. You got to go down some, Francisca. All right, that's good. Up a little bit. A little bit more. All right, that's good. It's Thursday, December 17, 2020, approximately 5:03 p.m. And we will open our regular city council meeting. Call it to order. Our Pledge of Allegiance. I guess we can all do that from where we're at. I cannot get up, so I will sit here. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Who's going to do the opening prayer, number 2?
Chief Burrows.
Okay. Chief?
You want to do it at my desk? Yeah, you sit and do it there. Just don't touch it.
Dear Lord, please bless this gathering as we enter into this joyous season. May we be filled with the wonder of Mary, the acceptance of Joseph, the joy of the angels, the duty of the shepherds, the determination of the Magi, and the peace of the child. We ask that you protect those that protect us, both here and abroad. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, item number 3, thank you, Chief, is the citizen comments and reports. And I know that we have a number of these. I think we need to read them. Fran, do you want to read the ones that we have?
I can. We have some people in the waiting room. Do you want us to get those
Well,
comments first?
That's fine if they want. Are they the same people that wrote these on the email?
Possibly. I'm not 100% sure. They've all called in, so give me just a moment.
Yeah, I have Tricia Scow, I'm sorry. And Will Daly. I don't think Will is a resident, but nevertheless. Joe Kruger. John and Donetta Morris, and then one from Elise Calvert, one from a number of people who signed this. About 82 people signed this one.
Well, Fran, let's start letting people in, and when they come on, remind them they have 3 minutes.
You're in the city council meeting. Would you like to present your comments?
Try them again.
The comments?
Hello?
Hello. Yes. Hello.
Hi, would
this
you
is Barney.
Hello.
comments?
Hello, this is Barney.
Hi, Mr.
Oh, hi, Barney.
And this is the comments portion of the city council meeting. Would you like to present your comments?
Yes. Is it now?
Yes, sir. So we have Mr. Farley, and who's the other one on?
Yes, this is Mrs. Brown. Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Brown, if you'd like to go first. You have
And,
Oh, okay.
and please keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, will do. I'm calling in because I wanted to register my support of the changes to the short-term rental ordinance, specifically limiting occupancy, which is a real problem here, posting maximum occupancy and a 24-hour contact, and allowing Port Aransas Police Department to issue citations for visual violations. I am a full-time resident of Port Aransas since 1979. My husband purchased our home here in 1975. The home was built in the late 20s. I have had issues in the last several years with short-term rentals, with trash, parking, vehicle congestion, and quite frankly, just finding it difficult to have any recourse when I have a problem. There's nobody to go to. But it has inundated our area over here on 12th Street, and finding it difficult to live the way we used to live here. And anyway, that's my statement.
Miss Brown.
Who is this? Who was that?
This was Wavell Milligan Brown that just spoke.
All right.
Can we get your address?
Okay. Yes, my address is 116 12th Street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Farley, if you'd like to go ahead with the comment.
Yes. Barney Farley, live on 410 East White Street. I'm a longtime resident. I'm supporting the proposed changes that we're going to be talking about tonight to the STR ordinance. I think they're it's a needed thing. I wanted to emphasize that the reason this is even on the table is that a sizable number of our citizens will prefer that this relatively new phenomenon, the STR industry, we would like for that industry to be influenced to adapt itself to the will of the residents rather than the residents being forced to adapt themselves to the STR industry, which in our opinion is grown beyond beyond its borders and certainly the ability of the city to enforce it. And that's why we're talking about it. The citizens are not happy about it. So we're talking about modifying the ordinances so that we can enforce the ordinance. This seems pretty simple. And that's a good first step. And I'm in favor of continuing to work on that problem and certain other problems that go hand in hand with it. Continue the process in the future council actions and look at the high density rules and regulations that were instituted. I don't know exactly when. It's been a while. That has allowed the high density. Lots of people, cars, trucks, parties, and the whole 9 yards. In fact, I urge the city to eliminate those high density setback allowances and revert it, replace it with the previous allowances, and do that whenever and wherever can be legally and practically done. And I know it can be legally and practically done in a lot of cases. I know we're not going to demolish the existing STRs. In addition, I would like to put in a plug for the Old Town concept, which has come and gone a couple of times here. The concept of having an old town, which is our heritage, and to make it a real thing, revitalize it, and treat that old town concept as a durable asset to the town and to the economy, and something that would be a draw for people if we want to encourage more people to come here. I think it would be a huge asset to our community for many years to come, because if we ignore it, then it's just going to get paved over and blown over and forgotten. And again, I think it would be an asset to the city, to the economy, and to the citizens to not even let that happen, and give us the old town idea back again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else, Fran?
Yes, we have Daly on right now. Luke.
This is Will Daly.
Hello, sorry about that. Go ahead with your citizen comment.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening and for being there tonight. Mayor Bouillon and council members. And I'd also like to address the changes to the short-term rental ordinance. And I think, we've heard from Wavell and Barney that we have had some problems with short-term rentals. And this is a cost to the neighborhood by these businesses. Now, businesses face costs. They have taxes, insurance, cable, and all that. But the social costs of the short-term rentals on the neighborhoods have been shifted to the neighbors. In effect, we're subsidizing the short-term business costs. In 2016, regulations to mitigate those impacts were passed. The objective was to manage short-term rentals, bringing about a more suitable and safer environment by instituting occupancy limits, mandatory parking requirements. Until recently, short-term rental owners have been on the honor system with no on-site inspections to corroborate the information submitted. Last week, I talked to Carla Van Zant, our code enforcement officer, and we have recently begun inspections of rental units when they apply for a short-term rental permit or come up for renewal. The pushback from short-term rental owners at the last council meeting was in response to initializing inspections, not to the changes to section 12250 through 12254. I doubt that they made it to page 283 of the packet to find out just exactly what was being proposed. These businesses have been flouting the rules for 4 years, and there has been no end to the problems they cause. It is not incumbent on the city to guarantee business profits at the expense of the health and safety of ourselves and our visitors. Nor is it reasonable to expect our neighborhoods to bear the brunt of the negative effects of short-term rentals. It's your responsibility to guard our health and safety and to respond to concerns of the citizens. The building department has begun to enforce the rules is to be celebrated. It's long past time. The proposed changes make it easier for city employees to carry out their duties. It allows police officers as well as building officials to issue citations. The police are the ones most often called to respond to complaints, and which are often after hours. Now, mandating an identifying placard allows anyone to readily identify the unit, the manager of the unit, their contact number, and the allowed occupancy. parking is directly tied to occupancy, and the number of spaces required can be deduced from the allowed occupancy, although it wouldn't be a bad idea to post that on the sign as well. Changes call for monetary penalties for infractions. Previously, we allowed 3 infractions before the city could act. The only penalty then available was the cancellation of a short-term rental permit. These changes make the short-term rental law more readily enforceable and should go a long way towards reducing the number and severity of violations. I urge you to pass the necessary changes and support the building department in their efforts to get control of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mayor, we don't have any more call-ins for citizen comments, so all we have is our submitted online comments. Would you like me to read those or some of those?
Yes, they need to be read.
Okay. So the first comment is from Lisa Turcott. She states that we support the changes to the short-term rental ordinance, specifically limiting occupancy, posting maximum occupancy in a 24-hour contact, and allowing the Port Aransas Police Department to issue citations for visual violations. We are full-time residents of Port Aransas. She is for the changes to the short-term rental ordinance. Next comment is going to be from Pat and Ives Cocklenberg. Their comment is, we support the changes to the short-term rental ordinance. As full-time residents, we value our quality of life. Posting and limiting maximum occupancy and a 24-hour contact number is necessary. We also agree that the Port Aransas Police Department should issue citations for visual violations. Thank you for your time, Ives and Pat Cocklenberg. The next comment is going to be from John and Donata Morris. Their comment is, Mayor Bouillon, council members and staff, it is obvious that the short-term rental business has essentially sidelined the greater good of the citizens of Port Aransas. Unless you happen to be a banker, developer, builder, investor, real estate broker, or property manager, I am neither of these and chose Port Aransas as home 9 years ago, and again chose it as we decided to rebuild post-Harvey for its sense of community. After Harvey, I publicly called for a moratorium on new construction so that it could be properly planned and regulated. The city instead opted to open the floodgates on development, and we now watch as Port A is paved over in the names of progress. And our sense of community is being crushed by the onslaught of poorly regulated and unenforced STRs in the special interest of the profit from them. Public safety is at risk as law enforcement, EMS, and fire are staffed for our full-time population and not for the actual protective risk that is inherent with level of development and actual population. Though I believe much more can be done, I fully support and implore you to support the amending Chapter 12 Licenses and Business Regulations, Article 8, Short-Term Rentals, amending procedures for registration, standards of conduct, penalty, and enforcement. It is past time to put the citizens and community first. He said he was going to plan on reading these comments, but he did not call in. Next comment is going to be from Joe Kruger. Dear Mayor and Council, so many of us living here feel inundated by the tsunami of tourists, trash, noise, cars, so much that people are leaving the community, moving elsewhere to escape what was once a charming town. If we do not get some control over the flood of short-term rentals, we are going to ultimately become nothing but a resort town with no schools, no sense of community, no full-time residents. Our history and our culture are being overwritten by those only interested in making money, not willing to add to the quality of life here unless it suits their bottom line. At the last city council meeting in November, a revised ordinance addressing short-term rentals was brought before you by Shannon Solomon and then postponed. This minimal revision is in collaboration with Rick Adams, city building director, has been in the works for 3 years. I would include occupancy limits of 2 people per bedroom plus 4 other persons for the unit, signage on each rental stating number of occupancy allowed, parking restriction, owner's 24-hour contact information, registration number, fines to enforce the rules, citations from police for infractions. Instead of a first reading, the measure was postponed until December 17th meeting due to heavy pushback by builders and developers over the enforcement of the original 2016 ordinance, as well as any changes. Apparently, some of these builders, developers believe we should not enforce ordinances nor make minimal changes that would control the flood of STRs that threaten to overwhelm us, even suggesting an enforcement moratorium for 18 months as it would impact their profits. The city's highest priority, as stated in the health and welfare of its citizens and visitors, it is not incumbent on the city to guarantee private business as a profit that compromises these values. We are wary of it. We support the proposed minimal changes to the STR ordinance, specifically limiting occupancy, posting maximum occupancy, and 24-hour contact and citations from the police. Please help us. We are drowning in STRs. Please enforce the laws as written, strengthen and improve them where possible. Please pass the amended ordinance brought before you, community first. We are not against development. We would like to see development done in our community friendly way, smart development.
Fran, is that the one that's signed with 78 signatures?
No,
Because that's the same letter that Mallory sent also.
Is it? Then that's from Joe Kruger. So
Yeah.
That's the same letter. Do you want me to read the names of Mallory?
No, just know that we have, just for the record, we have 78.
I believe there are 82 on there.
Right, I think they might have added some more. Okay,
Yeah.
so that one has an additional 82. And they all have local addresses, so additional 82 signatures.
He read his comments, so I won't read his again.
Did you have Greg Carr's comments?
I will go ahead and read Mr. Carr's comments.
You know what? It's a little lengthy. It goes beyond 3 minutes, so I would limit it to the first 2 pages.
Okay, sounds good. Dear Mayor and Council, this is from Greg Carr.
Yes.
Dear Mayor, City Council members and staff, good afternoon. My name is Greg Carr. I'm a Port Aransas citizen, voter, and actively involved in the community. I'm writing you on behalf of 50 local business people that will be affected by City Council's action on enforcing the International Property Maintenance Code. The group doesn't even scratch the surface in size of the thousands of rental owners that could be affected as well, many of whom are voters in Port Aransas. This group indirectly includes some council members and staff and city staff also. We work in the realty, home building, contracting, and architect industry. We are very concerned about recent attempts to modify the STR ordinance, begin enforcing the International Property Maintenance Code on all homes retroactively, as well as limiting occupancy without a dialogue. We understand that during the October City Council meeting, a council person brought up an issue with rentals blocking the streets, which impeded traffic. During the November meeting, an amended STR ordinance was on the agenda for council for approval. Additionally, it became apparent that a change to the STR ordinance may have been an attempt to limit occupancy, which in theory would correct the traffic problem. Why reduce occupancy? Is there a continual problem with rentals exceeding occupancy limits all over the city, or is it confined to a few problem areas or units? Why would the city so quickly consider abandoning its long-established occupancy calculation of 2 per bedroom plus 4 used by the STR ordinance? If there is a parking problem in Port Aransas, we would recommend that the city should deal with that problem directly and not attempt to fix the issue by limiting occupancy. Many subdivisions in PUDs, NUDs, and CUDs all somewhat self-regulate parking as their parking requirement for units are laid out in their regulating documents that was approved by City Council. Units not in one of these unit developments are required to follow the city ordinance for parking, which requires 1 parking space per bedroom. Reducing occupancy will likely result far-reaching impacts on the real estate market as well as investor rental market. Homeowners of rentals with reduced occupancy will have to reduce rental rates. Lower rates mean less hot tax being collected by the city. Is that something that the city of Port Aransas can afford to do? Consequently, lowering occupancy will decrease the number of visitors to the island and ultimately mean less patrons at local restaurants, fewer customers in shops, etc. The impact will lower sales tax collections by the city and tighter margins for retailers and service providers. The real estate market will affect fewer occupants will translate to lower rents and a reduction in gross rental revenue. The risk is that the math won't compute for an investor looking to participate in the rental market. Ultimately, it will depress prices for investment property. This could develop a bubble in the real estate market. We recognize there is infraction in Port Aransas that do not like all the tourists and visitors that take over the city for 5 months each year. However, with no other industry in Port Aransas, the local economy is 100% dependent on every tourist that visits our town. In short, it seems that the city is attempting to fix isolated problems with blanket ordinances. Additionally, issues that few folks deem to be large issues are focused upon and made to be much larger than they are in reality. Those owning unbuilt property under construction, are currently working with an architect to produce plans, are suddenly in for a surprise when they try to get their permit for certificate of occupancy, as the established rules have seemingly changed overnight. We would like to help devise solutions to the issues I have discussed below. We welcome a workshop or dialogue with city officials where we can examine the strains that rentals have on parking and occupancy.
Thank you, Fran.
I think I have one more. I have two more. I have one from Frank Morgan, Garrick Burnson, and Kathy Fulton. Frank Morgan comment is to the Port Aransas Mayor and City Council. I understand that you will be considering a revision of the city's STR ordinance at your upcoming meeting. I would like for you to know that I feel confident in saying that I speak for many full-time residents in Port Aransas that strongly support revising the ordinance. I personally believe we should have a moratorium on building any additional STRs. However, I'm sure that this is wishful thinking. In lieu of that, I respectfully request that you adopt the proposed revisions to Section 12 short-term rental ordinance. I read the proposed changes. I don't understand why any resident in Port Aransas would be opposed. It seems to me it would help alleviate parking issues, garbage issues, obviously alleviate overcrowding, and make life more pleasant for those of us that live here as well as our visitors. As things stand now, it seems that there are public safety concerns that would be addressed with overcrowded rentals and overcrowded parking. With your guidance, we have come a long way as a city since Harvey, but there's so much more that needs to be done in public safety area, and overcrowded rentals provide us no help. Our fire department is housed in tents, the EMS is in a condo, and the police department is in a portable building. Stress enough for our first responders. Please take positive action on the STR ordinance change, and hopefully it will eliminate a little stress for our community and those of us that live here and work here to protect Port Aransas. Thank you for your consideration. And Garrick Burnson wrote, please forward this to the City Council. My name is Garrick Burnson and I live at 224 East Roberts. The building department is considering enforcing a rule regarding size and square footage requirements for bedrooms and sleeping areas to limit the number of occupants in short-term rentals. This is a rule that was adopted in 2015 or 16, but is suddenly being enforced without notice. I am part of a group of interested local builders, developers, rental management companies, contractors, and business owners who want to work with the City Council to find a compromise in resolution to this issue. We believe the city is using a code that was not intended for short-term rental or transient use. It is my understanding COPA is also considering retroactively applying the rule to existing homes and withholding short-term rental permits until they are brought into compliance. In many cases, this will mean partial demolition or reconstruction of properties that have been permitted and approved by the building department since the adoption of this code. They are particularly focusing on built-in bunk rooms and sleeping areas. We are asking the City Council and Building Department to delay enforcement for 18 months until we find a solution for occupancy issues. I look forward to hearing from you from the City Council on this topic at the December 17th meeting. And last comment is from Kathy Fulton. She states, I wish to voice support for the proposed changes to Article 3, short-term rentals and enforcement. Issues with STRs have started to erode the character of Port Aransas with less and less consideration given to residents. There has been a steady increase in violations of occupancy for several years, and this summer seemed hyperinflated with violators. Safety of residents and visitors must be maintained. We can't go through another summer like this one. Currently, the city's master plan has been left unaddressed well over 5 years. Planned growth must be established. It is the Planning and Zoning Board's responsibility to work with the master plan no less than every 5 years. Numerous times this issue has been raised since Harvey, yet it just gets kicked down the road. Mayor Bouillon and David Parsons are concerned about Old Town, and I think that is great. We need to also work on protections for Old Town. This is history, neighborhoods, and a community worth protecting, not paving. I want to wish all the council and city staff a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. Thanks everyone for all your hard work in a very difficult year. I hope 2021 brings less challenges and more energy to tackle growing pains with responsible development. I hope to roll up my sleeves with you and work to find practical solutions. Final comment.
That it?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I go past my 3 minutes?
You don't have anybody waiting to make a comment on the phone or anything?
We have one. That might be Kathy Fulton. I'm gonna allow them in and see if they have a comment, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, do you have,
Hello,
hi, do you have a citizen comment?
what's that?
Do you have a citizen comment for the city council?
I do have a citizen's comment. Am I on?
You are. Can you state your name, your address?
My name is Lisa Turcott, and I have 2 addresses in Port Aransas. The house I own at 305 Avenue J, and the house where I live with my companion at 200 North 12th. One is on Avenue J, which is like living off of Highway 77 now. And the other is in Old Town, where it's somewhat peaceful because there's no short-term rentals around it. I support the changes to the short-term rental ordinance. I think short-term rentals are killing our community. I think the council needs to do everything they can in their power to put a moratorium on short-term rentals, not forever, but we need to get a grip on this. The difference between Avenue J, which my grandmother bought in 1957, and in the past 5 years, they built at least 6 or 8 houses across the street from us, and there's a neighborhood behind us which caused us to flood drastically, and we had never had flooded in our lives before. And there was nothing to be done about that, but there's still time to change Port Aransas. Our council and our mayor needs to help us, the citizens that reside and live there, get a grip. And those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any others, Fran?
No, sir, that was all.
Okay. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. That's good. All consent items are considered routine by City Council and will be enacted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a city, council member requests. And item A is the city minutes, November 12, November 19, and November the 10th. Item B is a third and final reading, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Article 3, traffic regulations on specific streets by adding the new Division 6, Section 2396, enforcement of traffic laws in private subdivisions and/or private roads to allow for Port Aransas Police Department traffic regulations in private subdivisions and on private roads, and providing for an effective date, reading, publication, and severance. And that's the consent agenda.
This is Bruce. Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated.
This is Chuck, second.
Call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 5 is a work session. The work session is presented to seek direction from council. No formal action or vote shall be taken at this time. These items may be addressed at a future council meeting for action. We're in a work session, guys.
Yeah, we're in a work session, Mayor. We're going to start with that item C.
Okay, presentation and general discussion of amending Chapter 12, licensing, licenses and business regulations, 7 or 8, short-term rentals.
And Rick, are you with us? Can you kick this off and give council a brief description of the proposed changes, please?
Yes, sir. So we were asked to look at the existing short-term rental ordinance, and based on some identified problems and challenges after, again, having been on the books about 3 years, what possible changes, were needed or we could make. And so what we looked at was something that was not in the original presentation, but in discussion got worked in, and that was the formula for calculating occupancy. And the part that has been a little problematic from an enforcement standpoint, because it leaves that number somewhat open-ended, was the addition of kids to the two per sleeping room plus 4. That was an easy calculation, but when you took the kids, that again makes it a little bit difficult. It was hard for the owners of the short-term rentals to have a consistent way to advertise what the true occupancy was. And again, without that, it created just one more challenge for us to enforce. So what we did in talking with Councilwoman Solomon, who kind of brought this to us to look at, we just simply removed the kids. We just left it to 2 plus 4. 2 per sleeping room plus additional 4. And we found that very, very consistent with similar tourist destinations that seemed to be, again, very defensible in respect to what others were doing. Actually, we were a little bit more liberal than some. We had originally talked about, and again, I know it's caused a lot of controversy, which when we were looking at the adopted International Property Maintenance Code, which applies basically once the property was built, and somehow that got tied to this ordinance, and I got to say that they're mutually exclusive. The discussions we've had with different builders and developers regarding the IPMC really was only coincidental to this particular discussion regarding the change to the ordinance. It had been a long adopted code as part of the international codes that we did adopt. But as we started to take a closer look at the plans we were getting and some of the designs, especially in the last couple of years, we started realizing that the size of some of the rooms, the sleeping rooms, might not be consistent with the IPMC. But directly related to what we're talking about here with this ordinance, one of the things, given all the comments and what we heard, again, in talking with Councilwoman Solomon, who kind of has, I guess I'll credit her for taking the lead on this. The one part that would have caused a problem with the IPMC is when we included in the first revision of this, the lesser of the our own short-term rental formula or any other building codes, which would have included International Residential Code, Building Code, and the IPMC. In this revision, you'll notice the most recent one that you have, we simply took out the lesser of and felt that it was perfectly appropriate. And some of the issues that we identified from the high occupancy issues that we identified, a lot of those could be handled with just simply enforcing the formula, removing the kid part, which again made the enforcement difficult. So that's what you have now was just simply the 2 per sleeping room plus 4, and then we did strike through the kids. So it's everybody's a person. The other one that we heard council talk about is essentially is maybe being a little redundant, was the section we added in there regarding noise and lights after certain hours. We just simply removed that whole section. We think that although our noise and light ordinance at some point might be might themselves need tweaking, they still have enough to them to really continue to be able to enforce that, not just on short-term rentals, but any place in town where we have noise and light and those kind of violations. We felt what we had, so we struck that through, and that's really the significant part. We left in because we really didn't hear anybody talk about just clarifying the enforcement language. We left in there one tool in the toolkit to help enforcement, which is visually identifying a large number of people. Could become prima facie evidence, which means basically just visual evidence that would allow us, if we felt the need arose, to write a citation based on that. Doesn't mean we have to, but again, so much of the time where you have where you have a call out because of a large crowd and perhaps a nuisance that is created, it's usually after hours. A lot of times it's going to be the police that are responding to that. So that was just, again, it gave us another tool that allowed for us to be able to write a citation if we identified 20 people in a balcony. Doesn't mean we would, doesn't mean we'd inquire as to if they're visiting, if there's a party going on, but again, it gave us that tool. That is that really is the meat of what you have before you in this most current rendition.
Thank you, Rick.
I wonder about the parking. What is the rule on parking? I've forgotten.
Well, Joan, a couple of years ago, again, we recognized we were seeing more and more visitors, and again in Texas, everybody likes to bring their car. That some of our existing parking ordinances could possibly be enhanced. So a few years ago, we changed the parking to on basically any property that was zoned to allow short-term rental, whether they were or not. If it was zoned for that, then you needed one parking space per sleeping room. And it didn't matter if it was a bunk room, a bedroom, no matter what you call it, if you could sleep in it, it needed a parking space. It wasn't made retroactive, so we didn't go back to all those houses that might have had 3 or 4 bedrooms that were short-term rentals that were approved and in developments that only required 2 parking spaces. That we didn't go back and retroactively change that.
So if you have 3 bedrooms, you have to have 3 parking spaces. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, on site. And we don't count garages. We were consistent. If it has a closable, lockable garage door, then history tells us that somebody's golf cart, fishing golf clubs are going to be in there and it's not going to be available for parking. So we don't count that. So 3 full, however many sleeping rooms, a full space for that. Now, that doesn't apply, just for clarity and clarification, in the planned unit developments. Some of the developments that are approved by council and planning and zoning by ordinance, as such, they basically submitted plans that were subsequently approved that determine their own parking for their planned unit development, for their master plan. So like most of the developments down south don't subscribe to that same formula that we have in town.
Right. Well, I really don't see any reason why we shouldn't try to help the citizens of Port Aransas, and in a very simple change in this ordinance makes sense to me. Just
Okay, Rick,
change it as given, yeah.
Rick, this Bruce, I got a question for you. One of the complaints about the occupancy formula was that it discouraged or didn't allow for like built-in bunk beds or some type of thing. Would there be any reason, and like this is just a question here, would there be reason not to, or to limit, say, just any room that has sleeping instead of just a bedroom, any room that has sleeping, because it's still going to count against your parking, correct?
Well, like traditionally living rooms, game rooms that might have a sleeper sofa in the old days. I know a lot of people have gotten away and have gone to bunks, but those rooms, although you could sleep and perhaps somebody crashes on the couch, we don't count those as sleeping rooms. They're not identified in the code as such. And so, but all others, whether they call it a sewing room, a anything else, if it can be used for sleeping, it typically is. And so we do count those.
Sure.
That's why it's kind of a balancing between the owner builder, to decide, well, are they going to call it a sleeping room and have to provide a parking space again, which is a pretty precious amount of space, or are they not, and and not use it as a sleeping room, and not have to provide the space. So, but the issue that came up with the IPMC, quite honestly, is that some room there's a size, and you guys know this, but just for again clarification. So the size of a sleeping room dictates how many people can be in there. And so the IPMC has, once that place is built, and for existing properties, it determines how many people can be in a certain size room. For example, 100, you got to have minimum 70 feet for the first person, 50 for the next. So 120 people, 120 square feet you'd have to have for a two mattress. And so obviously some of the built-ins and some of the plans that had been approved previously might have more than that in there. Might have a 200 square foot room that had four mattresses, 2 sets of double bunks. That might be a violation for IPMC. That again, if we want to just go to the formula is proposed, the 2 per sleeping room plus 4, I think we can leave that discussion, to a later date as to, that. Now, that doesn't change. I think everybody, again, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but he and I have talked that are in agreement that rooms that were never legal, that should never, it has nothing to do with size. They don't have egress. They don't have the proper window. They cross through another room. Just because they call that a bunk sleeping room, it doesn't matter what. It isn't legal, never was legal. And I strongly feel that should not be allowed. And I don't think anybody has advocated that. Although we see those, we see rooms that somebody would like to identify, but I think that most everybody is in agreement that that's not really the issue. The issue is simply rooms that have multiple bunks that might not fit the size per IPMC, but they would meet our occupancy based on short-term rental. So it takes that conflict out as well. We sometimes fall back on the fact that the stricter applies. That is written in to both the building codes and our own ordinances that, when there's a conflict, the stricter applies. I don't like falling back on that language. I think that if we want the stricter apply, we ought to just say what it is. And that's what the short-term rental, does. It just states very clearly 2 per sleeping room plus 4, if in this current rendition. That's rambling. I don't know if that answered your question directly, Bruce.
Sort of, but not really.
Can we take each one of these red line items in the ordinance one by one? I think it'd be easier to address them one at a time to be able to have a discussion on them so that we can, otherwise we're just going to all talk about things in general, right? To me, it'd be a little more organized.
Yeah. Fran, can you put that up on the screen?
I can. Give me just a moment.
Yeah, so there's the first one right there, F and G.
I think if we take those one by one, then we can kind of have a general discussion about those and see what council's response is to those items, right?
Yeah. Rick, you want to read off F and G or start with that?
Yeah, F, as you'll note, is just kind of of our feeling that it was just a little better wording, just an advertisement promoting the available of any dwelling unit for transient rental in violation of any provision is prima facie evidence of a violation. So if we saw an advertisement for something, it just kind of cleaned up the language. So that's to me, it doesn't change anything. Just I think maybe a little bit better understanding. The number G was the one I basically referenced that said if you see by visual inspection, and again it talks about a code enforcement officer, building inspector, fire inspector, police officer, greater occupancy than what we feel is which is allowed by the registration, then just that visual observation could be proof of a violation and could result in a citation. Doesn't mean it happened. And again, I liken this to a lot of how you've approached and how police have approached the the alcohol curfew on the beach. You know, again, if it's a rowdy group, it's a tool that they can say, look, I see 20 people here. I know good and well this 3-bedroom doesn't allow for that. You know, are you all staying here? If so, you know, that's a violation. So again, just a tool for that.
Okay, back up. Item F, does anybody have a problem with the changes to F?
Well, I have a question. Is that legal?
And that was going to be my first question. I'm sorry, Bruce.
F or G?
Yeah.
All of it. I will ask just in general, a general question, Rick and David. Have all these proposed changes been reviewed by our legal counsel to know that we can even do them by the way they're worded?
No.
Okay, because I don't think F is legal. I just don't see how that's like, and I'll give you an example of like, if I put an advertisement for I'm selling drugs, that's not illegal. It's when you come to buy them, the transaction makes it illegal. So I think that would be, that's almost entrapment.
Yeah, but without that, it pretty much eviscerates our enforcement of VRBO, Airbnb, and not just ours, but any third party that we were to look at in the future. If you can't look at VRBO and have somebody showing that is being advertised for short-term rental, but it's not registered, like I said, I have to go back 3 years, and like I said, we've had the hurricane in between, but I know Mike has been involved in almost all of these in some form or fashion because it's how we do catch a lot of people. So,
well, I mean, regardless of what we decide tonight, we can't pass anything without, you know, having our legal counsel review it. So if F were legal, is that something that people would have a problem with? City staff being able to look it up and
not just us. This would be, again, we've also talked, and you guys have heard the discussion about a third party going after and scouring these sites to see how many people are under the radar. So that's how they do it. So we definitely need some guidance on that.
I'm sorry, Rick, can you explain that with a third party going through and looking at the short-term rental?
Well, we've talked about the fact that the main way that we catch violators is by them advertising on the different online sites, VRBO, Airbnb, just to name a couple of the big ones. Right. Now, because those sites don't list addresses, they show little maps. The amount of time it takes to try to track one down it's 15, 20 minutes to go through each listing to find that a lot of them are registered and legal. The fact that we require a registration number on that advertisement also is the first giveaway. We see an advertisement that doesn't have our registration number on there. That's a violation, even if it's registered, because they've got to do that. Without that ability, I mean, the third party, because of the time constraints, is that, you know, we've been kicking around the idea of maybe increasing our short-term rental registration fee, which is significantly lower than anybody's at $50 every 2 years, to an amount that would allow more and more of these services have sprung up that will scour and have the technology to scour these sites and find everybody that's not registered. Then in turn, go to the hotel motel tax and
yeah, okay, I got it. That's why I didn't realize it was.
But that is their out of the probably dozen different companies out there that we've talked to, every one of them uses this as the primary means of finding the violators. That's where they're found.
Okay.
Rick, this is Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, just a quick observation. I know you and I talked a little bit via email earlier. So Free Harvey, you know, the whole thing of this is about regulation and being able to have something to be able to handle a process. Right now, I mean, the whole purpose that I understood the STR in the beginning was, you know, you have a lot of people out there. Our business, you know, we've managed HOAs for a long time, over 30 years. And I can honestly say we have paid our occupancy taxes. We have done all that. The whole purpose of this is the fact that if you look at the people that do not register, there are a lot of people out there that do not contribute occupancy taxes. That's just the version of this. And when I'm looking at this is right now, pre-Harvey, we had over 3,000 registered, or we're approaching that. And then now we've got 1,046. And you look at what just the inventory we manage, that's not a lot. And so I can almost assure you there are more than 1,046 developments, individual units, whether you're in a condo association or a house or renting. And so, you know, internally, it's good to have all these processes in place, but you got to be able to manage it. You got to be able to control it and handle it. And so it's our job to find resources for you guys and figure out a way to do that. We need to be able to police it better. I mean, I'm hearing that our staff is taxed, our EMSs, everything's taxed. I get it. So let's put the process together. Is there a way that we, you know, do we need to staff this out? Do we need to third party this thing out? How do we need to do it to regulate it? But the main thing is getting it where we can put all this in place, but if you can't regulate it, you can't process it. I mean, what good is it?
Yeah, it seemed that when we first initiated this, we had really good compliance. We think we were probably in the high 90s. And now it's, you know, after post-hurricane, maybe the every other year registration doesn't help. If you look at our golf cart compliance, it's really easy because you drive around the street and see a golf cart without a license, they quickly get pulled over by the police. So that one's easier. But I agree, we have to come up with something. And there are third-party companies that most cities with these STR programs push out to a third party. Because the third party, they have software that can go out and analyze databases, whether it's VRBO, Airbnb, and they can come in and figure out who's doing what. But for us to do that, it is so extremely labor intensive. We're just not getting there. And definitely when we start working on our budget this spring, which is just around the corner, we definitely have to bring this to you guys for our summer goals workshop to get this, you know, to get a third party system in place. Because like you said, Chuck, we don't know. We think we're right now maybe around 50 to 60% compliant, if that, but that's not good enough.
Right.
I mean, like you said, we're missing out, you know, and if those people are not just paying the city, if they're not paying the state, that, you know, that's a crime that the state's going to come and get involved with.
Yeah, and I'll say that I don't mean that people are not paying it. I'm just saying, so I'll take.
Well, there'll be a hodgepodge of both. Some of them
say,
think that they can pay the state and get away with, you know, we find that one a lot too. They'll pay the state, but not pay off the city.
But it sounds like just all the talk, you know, in the correspondence so far about the enforcement. And so, yeah, you take 10,046 times 50, and that's for 2 years. You know, you're not covering up anything. And so like Rick making a point of revisiting, looking at, you know, increasing the annual fee. And two, the regulation of the STR, you have restrictions in place. And to help you guys out, and that's what I was thinking of the outsourcing, is there's got to be better ways of checks and balances. So in other words, every 12 months, you know, not so much the city's response.
I'm sorry, is it 20? It's 24 right now, right?
That is correct.
Well, it's 24, but it's not even on a calendar year basis, you know.
Exactly.
So
right, and that's what I was.
They're expiring all the time.
You make it a set deal every year that anybody that rents is going to rent in the city of Port Aransas.
Like a parking permit, they buy it January 1st and it's good till December 31st.
Yes, and then you already have pre-existing.
If you make it 12 months,
in
you
place,
doubled your increase or doubled your rate.
Anything we change moving forward, we got you guys, we have documentation, we get the software, the stuff that it's going to be it's going to be tasked at first, but once we get that in place, then you know, every year, the person that's renting is forced to go in. Your thing expires. You need to go into the city. You need to register. You need to state what you got, what your intention is. Do it every year, and that kind of helps everybody. Puts the responsibility on them. And then if they don't comply, then you set the fines into things and make them accountable. But you got to start making people accountable for, because
you're right. That's it. And that's really not any different than it is right now. I mean, they should be registering, you know, right now that the trick is getting to them. And even when we find them, again, it's extremely taxing provision to then go back and calculate the tax with the penalties and interest, and then to go through the whole collection process. Because again, our finance department is still trying to get some of our municipal buildings funded and built. So that's the other challenge, that, you know, we were to find them, you know, then it's a whole nother legal process to start collecting. And again, we don't really care about the state that much because we want to get ours first because the state will garner bank accounts. So we want to make sure we're in first so that we get our money and then whether we rat them out to the state or not, it's kind of the secondary issue. So
I'm just visualizing you guys, you guys having 2 homes. So you got 2 homes with 20 people out there. You're going there and now one's a registered STR, one's not. What's going to make it any different or how you're going to handle that situation? There isn't. I mean, you're going to handle it either way, whether you're an STR or if you're just a regular resident, you're in violation of something apparently, because we're we're addressing it. So if everybody that actually rents is forced to actually have to be enrolled, if not, then, you know, I'm just thinking out loud on it.
Right. And Wendy, backing up to your legal question, I can think we probably have a dozen citations that are all issued based on this that Mike's involved with. You know, where we've screenshot, that's how we've caught the people as not being registered. So I mean, like I said, we'll go back and revisit it, obviously, but I don't think we're going to find any issue with that. If they're out there on a public website advertising, this isn't a unique part of a short-term rental ordinance for us. It's you know, you find that pretty consistent with most of the short-term rental ordinances.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doubting that your ability to rewrite an ordinance. I just want to make sure all these things that we propose have been vetted by Mike, because I think that's the right thing to do before we, you know, make any decisions on whether or not we want to, or if we can, you know, enforce them and how they're presented. So, but I mean, personally, I have, you know, again, going back to try to address these one by one, and I do think there are a lot of big picture issues. But I mean, that item F, I mean, I don't have a problem with making it as, you know, easy on you guys as possible to try to figure out a way to, you know, find the violators. I get it. So.
Okay. Good.
All right, G, I guess I have a question on the premise behind this. And so for me, it says, you know, the way I read it, and help me if I'm interpreting it incorrectly, is that basically, let's just say, you know, you have a house. We pass the rule in here later on that says they have to have the little placard or whatever it is. It says, you know, they can have 20 sleeping people or whatever we have on there. I mean, is this saying that a law enforcement officer, a building inspector, a fire inspector, or a police officer can go by there and do a visual spot check and then issue them a citation on the spot? Is that the point of this, or what is it?
No. That they would be able to note that in a report. Well, police, for example, because a lot of these happen, you know, after hours. So the police would write a report. They'd say they observed 12 people, and they were loud, rude, whatever. That could once presented to us, that police report could be the basis of a citation. Also, if we were to go in and again, as you know, as somebody mentioned, we're trying now to inspect, you know, get back on track the inspection, which has been in the ordinance all along, these properties on renewal, and we were to see again beds for, you know, 15, you know, and it's only registered for 10. That would give us visual cause to ask the question, you know, wait a minute, you know, we see beds for that many, you know, you're only allowed, you know, whatever that occupancy that gets determined. So.
And that part I get, right? I mean, I think if there's any reason for us to suspect that a house is registered for 12 people and we think it's, you know, trying to sleep 20, then obviously we need to be able to have some mechanism to find them or, you know, whatever. But I mean, the analogy I keep hearing people say, or you keep saying, is that, like, you know, again, that house, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people outside on balconies or whatever, and the police drive by and they see a big disruption. Well, I mean, I guess a house overloaded with people doesn't necessarily mean they're all violating the occupancy load, right?
No,
so
it doesn't.
Okay.
But again, that's why I say, like with a significant amount of our code enforcement.
There's a violation there? No, I mean, if the officer feels like they're violating something or there's a scene, then they can stop and ask, instead of having a complaint-driven response, which is what we have now, which means a neighbor has to call in and then they go over there. They can actually visually see it and say, okay, let's stop and talk to them, which is I don't think it's too much. I know that Chief Borough asked for a little more teeth in it, so that's something that we were.
Chief, do you think your police officers are going to drive by a house that has 20 people on a balcony and walk up to them and ask them if 20 people are allowed to sleep there?
I think we're conflating two issues. The complaint driven is the noise, not the occupancy.
Right, and I get that, and we need to inspect those. I totally get it.
So what we do need is to clarify who gets the citation. I think the property owner should get the citation, regardless who's occupying it. If there's 35 people in that house, I don't want to type it off or try to figure out who the renter is.
Yeah, how do you? I mean, that's
present.
Right. Who knows? I mean,
like to be able to go in and like Rick just said, document the fact this is overloaded. Come back Monday, put the tax records, say this property belongs to Joseph, and they can just make the citation.
Okay, but again, I mean, I'm just trying to think this from a legal standpoint. If you drive by and you see 35 people having a big party, and that's a problem, right, or whatever, and you say, I'm gonna give this to turn this into Rick on Monday. So then Rick calls it up and he said, oh, that's Dave Parsons' house. You know, he's got 35 people there last night.
Again.
Does Dave get a citation because the chief saw 35 people there, or because he actually thought 35 people were sleeping there? I mean, the way this reads is like there's visual inspections of more than allowed occupancy load. I mean, again, I get when we think there's a lot of people staying there. We do an inspection. They had, but how do we know that, right?
Well, I think maybe to explain, we'll do this. Say this goes through, and there's 2 houses. They each have 3 rooms, so they can each have 10 people in each house. Because they were originally going to put 15 in one house, but because they had to rent 2 of them next door, they go down and there's 10 people in each house, or 15 or whatever number it is, and they're all going over to one house to have a barbecue, and they're all on the porch. And a police officer drives by and sees these 15 people on the porch, even though they're staying in 2 houses, has to differentiate between that being 15 people staying in one house or just 10 people in one house and 5 in the other house. I mean,
that's what I mean. So
if you put a time that says actually before midnight is this, and then from midnight beyond, whether they're partying or whatever, then that's what they do in the bars, the restaurants. They say, here's the number of people you can have in here, period.
But, and I get that, right? I mean, I want to give y'all tools too, right? I'm not saying that this is bad. I just want to make it make sense. If we're going to put in rules, it needs to make sense, right? So, I mean, 20 people after midnight could be a problem, whether it's a short-term rental or whether it's a private residence, right?
Well, they're going to have a sign outside that shows what occupancy is.
And please don't negate the bigger piece of that isn't the parties out on the balcony, although that's one. The much bigger piece to this is the inspections. When fire inspections, the building inspector, code enforcement goes into a building and sees very illegal bunks. They see beds. That's the visual inspection. That's probably the bigger piece to this than the outside. So I think the outside is something that we could use as a tool because of the language here. But again, read it carefully. The bigger one is when we go in and inspect an existing rental unit and find that it's completely different than how it was registered, that becomes the basis to possibly write a citation, just that visual evidence.
Well, I mean, in that analogy, I'm for that. I mean, that makes sense to me. But I just keep hearing this analogy of people partying at a house and you're going to write them a ticket.
Yeah, I don't want to focus on that. I mean, I think that's a possibility. But the bigger piece of that is being able to go into a place and see beds with pillows on them that are far in excess of what they're registered for or are able to sleep in our ordinance. So I think that's the bigger piece. We don't ever have to do the other at all, and this still stands as a valid, I think, is a valid tool to help with that.
And this is Chuck, and that's where I think having that every year, 12-month, January 1 inspection, forces the homeowner to have to provide, and obviously then when the city comes in and finds those changes or whatever, you have a lot more teeth to act on it.
And if we have an issue with the number of people in the house, doesn't mean we can't go back Monday and with the homeowner or the property manager and verify if they're in compliance.
Exactly.
Address the problem immediately, but address it on a long-term basis. So This house is authorized 10 people to sleep there, there's 20 sleeping places, even though we won't necessarily have to wait until January 1st to do that inspection.
Sure, sure.
And all this language, the F and G, it's pretty standard language for most of the ordinances that specifically in Texas. I think that we would be okay legally, but I mean, yeah, we can pass it by them, but it's pretty standard language.
Well, I mean, anything we adopt as a resolution organization or ordinance need to be reviewed by our attorney. I mean, that's just standard.
Attorney driven. This has to go to the attorney.
Right. We'll just make whatever suggestions we made, was run by Mike, and he can bless.
Yeah, I mean, once you guys approve whatever it is, again, 3 readings, we'll run it by Mike and have him review it.
Well, I think we should do it after tonight. Right. You guys, we can pencil things in, and then we'll send it to Mike immediately so that we're not wasting our time going down the road of 3 readings.
Right, because in the second reading, we can make any adjustments and approve it at that point. If he didn't like something, then we can rethink it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on.
Okay.
We had what, 6?
A6.
Right. So 6 is the one that we just need direction. I think I kind of laid that one out. It's simply the occupancy formula that's kind of the crux of the whole deal. 2 persons per sleeping room plus 4. That's.
And then with the exclusion, it's the exclusion of children. And then this section shall apply if in conflict with any other occupancy regulations adopted by the city. So that's the one that X's out the IPMC occupancy calculation. So this would be the sole occupancy calculation in the city, which currently we have 2.
I think that's the bigger issue, right? And what we've been hearing from multiple parties, since the last month or 2 months, is that the conflict, right? What do we have? What are the rules? How are we enforcing them? And which way are we going? Are we going to be retroactive? Are we not? And there's a lot of problems coming from that. And so I think with this clarification, that will help alleviate the problems with the International Residential Code that we're having right now. Yeah. I think that we need clarity on that to be able to give to the people who are building homes, period. And so I think that's super important. So,
and I think it's a big step for us. I mean, I think it's still it's a good move that's going to solve some of the issues that I've heard.
I also think that from what I've heard so far for what that's been out there from a lot of people is that 4 might be inadequate for a home that's, something over 3,000 square feet. And, you might have 4 bedrooms with 2 people. And if it's 2 people, period, and they each have, each couple, say you have 4 bedrooms and it's 4 couples and they each have, 2 children, then if you have 1 bunk room in that house that is 3,500 square feet, then that bunk room may be able to have 4, maybe 6 bunks for those children. And since we're, letting them be part of the calculation, I think that we should consider an additional per person, particularly if it's children, on a larger home. If it meets parking requirements, which I think is important. I mean, the big problem with a lot of this is parking, right?
Right.
I mean, it is. It's big. It's adequate parking. That seems to be a big issue. Obviously, noise and trash, all those things that you could have on a small house or a big house. It doesn't matter. But parking is a big issue. So I like the idea that's been suggested of annual registration, but also with your annual registration, presenting some parking plan for your short-term rental. And that would help us capture all the parking problems we have now for the homes that are already grandfathered. Because to Rick's point, when we started this 4 years ago, there was no retroactive parking resolution to those homes that were already built. So all these homes that are in these older neighborhoods that don't have sufficient parking for short-term rentals, that are now being short-term rental houses that maybe were long-term forever, but someone's thrown a short-term rental sign on them. They don't have adequate parking at all. And so if we do some kind of enforcement, particularly for these, annual registrations that have to do with parking plans, then we can address occupancy and parking for the allowed occupancy.
So submit a parking plan along with your occupancy limits.
Yeah. And I think if you do that and you say, okay, well, two per sleeping room plus additional 4, which would cover a bunk room or a child sleeping on a mattress or whatever it is, wherever the 4 people are. Again, I think that on a house that's say 3,500 square feet, that's, in a neighborhood that supports a big house. I mean, 3,500 square feet houses aren't going to be in Old Town, right?
No,
they're going to be in the planned unit developments. They're going to be in these already communities that are established that have the parking, whether it's in front of their space or in other parking spaces. But again, you don't need additional parking for kids, but I think that we ought to look at an additional at least 2 for larger homes.
Well, as I say, I don't disagree with you, other than the fact that if you're at a 3,500 square foot home, it's not a 3-bedroom. It's going to probably be a 5. It's going to probably be a 5
I know,
bedroom.
but it still applies. Again, yes, a 3,500 square foot home is probably going to be a 4 or 5 bedroom home. But if you have 4 or 5 couples come,
that's giving you 14 people.
Well, I think the point she's making, it's a ratio thing. If you have a small 2-bedroom home and they get 2 plus 4, that's a way bigger impact than a 3,500 square foot home getting the same 2 plus 4. Whereas if the 3,500 square foot home got 2 plus 6, you're kind of equaling the playing field a little bit more.
The ratio, yeah.
Well, I agree, except now that we're going from a simple 2 plus 4 per room to we're going back to IPP or IPMC.
No, not necessarily.
That was like 32 people or something crazy.
So we ran some numbers just to look at what some throwing a variable in here.
Sure.
So we looked at all 2020 dwelling unit permits. Nicole ran the numbers. So if you took, for example, 3,500 square feet and said, okay, everything from 3,500 square feet down gets the 2 per bedroom plus 4, and anything above 3,500 square feet gets, let's just say 2 plus 6. So if you run those numbers, the 3,500 number comes out at about 6%, the top 6% homes. So 94% of the homes would not hit that threshold. They'd all be in the 2 plus 4 category, and only, I think it was about 40 something homes would hit the 3,500 threshold, if that was your number.
So grand 3,500 is 2 per bedroom plus 6, not 4?
No. I'm just saying if you throw out some ratio.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't really complicate the equation that much.
And that's with over 3,500 square feet.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to try to even it out a little bit. I mean, I think as we look at this in our comp plan, which is coming, who knows where we might break this thing down even further. We might break it into zones where we have really hot spots that even the 2 plus 4 is a problem, and it needs to be 2 plus 2. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. We might want to break it down into 4 categories.
And I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that's something we need to do, because again, much of the letters we're receiving, much of the complaints are coming from certain zones and sections of town that weren't short-term rental neighborhoods, right? And I get that, and I want to help those people. And
you might find zones where off-site parking is non-existent.
Yeah, right.
And it could really exacerbate that problem, and they may need a different regulation for that particular neighborhood. So I do envision this as a start, but I think it's to really hone it down and figure out how to troubleshoot problem neighborhoods, I think you're going to have a custom, by the end of this, by the time we get into our comp plan and get finished, I think we're even going to look at something with a lot more custom ability to it to really help out individual areas. That's my 2 cents.
Well, are there 35,000 square foot homes that are being short-term rentals?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are. So if you look at the 40 something, probably 85% of those, Joan, are going to be in Cinnamon Shore 1 and 2, Pamia and Sunflower.
The big
Is that
there are a few north of Access Road 1A.
Yeah.
However, and most of those happen to be, for example, I'm looking at a couple here. Here's a couple on Seabreeze. So there are one, so they don't even allow short-term rentals. So some of the bigger ones that are back in town, there's only probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Check. Can we get a copy of that report sometime?
Yeah. So there's about 15 of them, Joan, above the 3,500 square foot number that are back north of 1A, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 of those don't allow short-term rental. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it leaves us about 5 or 6 back in town that would fall into that higher category that do short-term rent.
But they wouldn't have parking for that many people.
Well, right. You like Wendy said, even though you let's say you fall into the category of 2 plus 6, and you're one of these 3,500 square foot homes, you still have to have the 1 parking per bedroom. So if you're a big 6-bedroom, 3,500 square foot home, you still have to have 6 on site, meaning on your property. You would have to still have 6 parking spaces.
And that just means that there's never going to be any grass or anything for water to run off or anything. It's just all going to be paved, right?
Well, it's catch-22. Do you want parking or do you want?
Yeah, but impervious surface is a whole nother.
That's hard, I know.
And that's excluding the garages, correct?
Correct. If it's a short-term rental, it cannot include, it can be a carport that doesn't close, so that has at least an opening on. Rick, is a carport opened on 1 or 2 sides?
We've 2 sides. There's a code definitely.
It can't be a lockable garage. Doesn't count.
That's the big part. Lockable.
And that's because the owners won't let them use it. May not.
Typically, that's correct.
In most cases, the vast majority.
This is something we could address though, since it's going through 3 readings. The 30, because I'd like to get a copy of that and just make sure that the number is what we need to hit, 3,500 square feet.
Yeah, and that was just something that I
3,200
looked
or
at.
what's the magic number we're looking for to increase 2 people?
Well, again, it's just 2 people, right? I mean, and like Dave said, there's a big difference between saying, 2 per bedroom or 2 per sleeping room plus 4 for a 1,500 square foot. Then
that might be too much.
Yeah,
I mean, we might find that a small 2-bedroom that's in the 1,500 foot range, 2 per bedroom plus 4 might be too.
But that's what they can do now, plus unlimited kids. So it's not worse.
No, I know.
No, and I don't think it's worse, but I'm just saying if we're going to adopt a change, I think we need to give a little bit more credit to the larger homes that actually can accommodate respectfully more people. I mean, because the issue is overcrowding, right? It's the 1,500, it's the 1,000 that have 20 people, and not a 4,000 square foot house that can hold 20 people.
I agree.
I think
the problem is parking, though. I mean,
yeah.
And I agree with that, Joan. I totally agree with that. But again, I think the parking problems are in the places in town that weren't designed for short-term rentals. So like Dave said, that's going to take a lot more massaging than tonight. I mean, I think that's something that we're going to have to look at,
Well, I will say that the people in this, Bruce, the complaints are parking and trash. No one's saying that they're unhappy there's 100 people in there. But from a city standpoint of a health and safety issue, The city doesn't care as much about the parking. It cares more about the health and safety. You know, and also they don't care about parking because you have to have fire access and EMS and all that. But really, it's the parking is the big issue for the citizens, and for the city, it's the occupancy. So we need somehow.
Well, actually, Bruce, I mean, parking is a big issue for us, especially the on-street parking, because our big concern is that we got to make sure that we have 20 feet of fire lane response.
Well, again, that's back to health and safety.
So,
if the house is full of 20 people and everybody's parked in there, that's a safety issue. It's not that the neighbor, you know, once the door's closed, the neighbor doesn't care if there's 100 people or if there's 10. They care how
Have
many
you
cars
ever
are
lived
parked.
in a short-term rental area? You care. You care that people are parking in your yard. You care that.
Again, we're back to the parking. We're not back to the number of people living inside a unit or staying inside a unit.
Decreasing the amount of people that are per, I mean, this is obvious, but when you decrease the amount of people per unit, you're decreasing the amount of parking per unit. And part of our issue is it's not just that we have that many people, but we offer extra vehicles for luxury while they're here, which adds to that. So we don't have a way to accommodate that. The houses just, we don't have the parking available for that. So my goal is if you take 10 people or say 20 people that were renting one house and they're now renting 2 houses, they're spreading everything out. It's accommodating for the citizens. It's accommodating for the city. It's safer. It meets all aspects of the IPMC. Are we ready to move on?
Well, so how does when you're saying a ratio, like, is it tiers? Like if you're under 3,500 square foot right now, it's 2 plus 4. And if you grade than 3,500, it's 2 plus 6.
Well, that was just.
We were just throwing a number out there,
Yeah.
but I think
Well,
we need to look at it to see where the break off or the breakaway
Sure.
is. It may be 3,000 square feet.
Well, I mean, I guess,
it may be 3,100 square feet, whatever.
So
But
just for consistency, I know that when you make big changes in this, you can nullify a first reading. I guess my question is, if we put a ratio in now and then we modify the number if we're going to pass it tonight at the next reading, or do we say, let's get that number and put it in and do the first reading?
I think I think you're probably right, Bruce. You could throw both ratios in there with the idea that you're going to slightly tweak them.
And the reason is, if we don't, then a significant change to the ordinance makes you restart the clock. So
That's true.
So if we, so do you want to put that in there then, just for?
I have no problem with the addition and then kind of looking further into it.
Yeah, because I'd like to give you guys a breakdown of like maybe 2019, 2020 numbers, and then with the square footages, and then give you like a percentage chart of if you pick a certain number, where you're at percentage wise, and then we can color highlight them. So you'll also know where those properties are.
I think that's important, the neighborhoods, because again, I think a lot of this goes back to, Old Town versus, different.
Yeah, Nicole worked that up for me, and she color graphed it and broke it out by address and subdivision. So it was pretty convenient.
Yeah, if we can get that report, I'd like to look at that. I know she was working on it when I first talked to her about this a month or two ago, but she just started that.
Okay.
So I think it's important that we are agreeing to identify that this is going to supersede the IRC or the International Building Code. So we're not going to have
IPMC.
We're not going to have problems there that we're having, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're going to add a ratio to it as well, just so we're clear on that.
Yeah.
And are we going to have some discussion about going retroactive and not, and all those kind of things? I mean, I think that needs, I don't know where that comes into play here, but I think we need to discuss that.
I think we need a legal opinion from Mike.
Yes.
Yes. This is not going anywhere until it gets a legal opinion. I can tell you.
Right. It's very important that Mike, the biggest issue is things, houses that the city has approved.
Yeah.
And what were the factors and what were the parameters that we approved them under, and what is the liability issue of taking, go retroactively going back and taking those away from somebody. So we have to run that in front of Mike.
It's a taking. It's against law. All right.
What would the retroactive part be, I guess, on?
Parking and taking away occupancy limits.
We're not taking them away, we're changing them.
Well, yeah, okay, but that's, if you give someone, they can have, say the city approved 10 people and tomorrow it's only 8 people, we've taken away 2 of those people that can stay there.
Well, I think too, it's what's happened with the recent decisions to follow some of these already adopted codes that we weren't maybe enforcing before, and it's creating problems because people have gotten building permits, built homes, and they're going to get a C of O, or they're going to get their short-term rental permit, and then they're being told that they can't do that, because now all of a sudden we're following a different rule or different code. And so I think that's what we need to clarify so we don't get in trouble. The city. So like you said, so we it doesn't appear as though we're trying to make it a taking.
Well,
by taking something back that we allowed.
Well, that's why we need to run it by the attorney to see if he thinks that.
Yes, you're right.
Well, and there's just all kinds of things that aren't enforced. And then once you try to enforce them, is that called a taking?
No, ma'am, if the rules were in place and we weren't enforcing it, that's not a taking. It's when you go back and you retroactively.
The rules were in place about what kind of building codes you were using, and you didn't enforce them, I guess. That's why people now are screaming, right?
Well, I think, John, more so it's if you change the speed limit, it's everyone just drives at a different speed.
Right.
If you change occupancy and someone built a structure based on a set of rules that you had in place, and then you change the rules, so now the structure is illegal. That's the difference. That's what we have to be careful of not doing.
Well, I remember working some big fancy place over here for when we had the home tours, and they had bunk rooms that did not have an exit anywhere. They had to go through the living room or through the kitchen to get out. So that should be illegal, right?
And that wouldn't qualify for grandfathering.
And
well, actually, according to IPPC, if it has, or IPMC, if the entranceway is more than 8% of the square footage of that room, it is actually legal.
You still have to have ingress and egress, though.
But you said the egress is just they had to go through another room to get out. So
right, sleeping rooms are different, though.
Okay, well, that's what it said in the thing. But you're right, my IP sleeping rooms are different.
Yeah, sleeping rooms need an emergency rescue opening and an egress.
When we built our house, we had to do that. Even if you have to jump out a window, which is kind of crazy, it's there. Yeah.
Okay, so for item 6, do we add a provision?
I think we should put at least.
I think you just
mention ratio.
You just mention the additional ratio so that you can at least it's sitting in there so you can
so that
tweak
we can
it.
modify
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Correct. So let's go to A12-253.
A12-253.
Or displayed as indicated. That's the modification.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's.
Right. Yeah, and that's simply to cover the placard that's the placard that was required for the information previously discussed.
Okay, then jumping back to H, that's also the placard being placed at or near the primary entrance.
Right.
That's fine.
With that.
And then jumping down to section 12-254, penalty provisions. And that's something that would go to Mike.
Right, those are just statutory. And again, the big one is any violation of health and sanitation and zoning. Again, our feeling is we need a big hammer there. I mean, it needs to be a pretty significant deterrent to deter somebody from wanting to cheat and stick that bedroom back after we leave in that, in that kitchen, in that hallway, the ones that we all agree are completely illegal. It becomes a life safety issue and people die when they do that. And that's, we want to use the maximum that's available. So, obviously we'll get Mike to confirm, but these are statutory limits.
And that's it.
Well, can you explain just just B to me on that one under 12-254B. Says this, any other penalties provide the city manager or designee may direct the city attorney to institute an action in any court having complete jurisdiction to enjoy any violation. Does that mean you go after them with everything, or what does that exactly?
People say, we keep writing them citations, which is our biggest, our biggest hammer, and it gets expensive, but if they don't pay them, this just allows David to designate, or I can say, file suit against them, get an injunction, go to court. It just makes it clear. I mean, it's important you can do that, but it just makes it very clear. Anybody wants a short-term rent, we just want to make sure they know all the rules, and it's a business. So if they ignore the rules and they keep renting without registering, David can basically get an injunction to force them, court order.
Sure.
Hey, Rick, before when we did this, the big push was to try to capture short-term rental hot tax and things like that, because we didn't and monitor and know, because there were so many of them, and it felt like it was overwhelming. To Chuck's point earlier, we just didn't even know how many we had. So if we move to an annual registration, which I'm in favor of, but we certainly are going to need to hire a third party, source to do that, because you guys don't have the manpower to do that. But if we do that, is there a way that we can implement, and I know this is already in here, but, because I think before it was like 3 strikes in the 2-year period and you can't rent or something like that. So maybe have the same rules, but it's 3 strikes in the 1-year period or whatever. Something again to look at, in the future. Because I really think for the most part, it's not the majority of short-term rentals in Port Aransas that are being, but again, even a small group of bad apples can rock the cart, and I get that, right? So
the 80-20 rule.
That's a pretty, it's a good one, because it's pretty, obviously just suspending somebody's ability to short-term rent for 3 weeks in the summer. That's a pretty big hit. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, we'll bring it back, but, the 3 strikes, we could just change to, again, the same thing, 3 strikes in any 2-year period. Because don't forget, we're hammering them with $500 citations, and that can be done every day the violation exists. So, somebody that refuses to register, we'll write them a $500 citation every day. And Duncan will throw out half of them, but that's pretty steep.
It'll get there.
Just 3 strikes would be pretty excessive. I don't actually think we've even come close to anybody with a couple of strikes, but I like them knowing that that's a possibility.
Is that something we include in the language tonight?
It's already there. We already have that language in there.
It's already in there. We're just going to look at the language to see if it's biannual and just we'll make it annual next time and bring it back.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Any other comments?
Just so do we want to use the 3,500 square foot house? Is that threshold?
Starters, I think, yeah.
The threshold. I think it's a great starting point.
We can tweak the numbers later if we need to, but I think it needs to be in there so we don't violate the severe changeability of the ordinance.
I think you're going to find that number is going to be pretty consistent through 18, 19, 20. As far as that capturing a high percentage.
But I know Dave and Nicole's already done, but you'll do that research and let us know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Nicole.
Earlier than a couple days before.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna get it. We'll get it knocked out and try to get it to you guys.
It's Christmas. We've got a little bit of time.
And I actually already have some of those spreadsheets going back to 16 that I had to do when we were changing the building permit fee to try to kind of analyze all that. So I've already got basically a lot of those numbers that may be able to do it really quickly.
Make sure that by all means, make sure that the attorneys take a look at this before.
Yeah, we're going to get it to Mike right away. We'll send it to him either tomorrow or Monday.
Okay,
I've heard that call.
good.
You want us to say it one more time?
I will if you want.
No, I was teasing Rick, not you.
Mayor, you want to take us out of the work session?
Reconvene open session number 6. Take action, if any, for the work session. No action necessary at this time, right? Except for.
Yeah, you can go to D.
Yeah. First reading, amending Chapter 12, licensing, license and business regulations, Article 7, short-term rentals, amending procedures for registrations, standards of conduct, penalty and enforcement, and providing for severance, reading and effective date, and providing for severance, reading and effective date. That's a repetition. Anything in there?
So are we going to vote on this tonight?
Well, yeah, someone could make a motion and throw and add in that one language, so at least get through first reading.
Okay, so I guess well, actually,
Go
it's your
for it.
baby. It's your baby.
Make
But
a
if not-
motion to approve with additional language to section 6, adding 3,500 square feet
Yep.
Well, adding a ratio.
For 2 plus
or
6.
2
Yeah.
plus 6.
Is there a second?
I second.
Call a roll.
Councilmember Owens. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
I didn't hear Beth.
Councilmember Owens.
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay.
Mark McCline, are you on with us?
He is.
He is? Okay, good. So we need to get him because he turns into a pumpkin in about 20 minutes.
I have to go pick up a daughter somewhere at 7 o'clock, so I have just a few minutes.
All
Yeah.
right, let's get on with it then.
We have to go into.
Hold up, we got to go into executive. You want to bring us into executive session, Mayor?
Yeah, it is. What time is it? I don't have a.
6:43.
43.
43.
6. No, it's almost 7 o'clock, right? 6:53.
No.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir, 6:43.
All right.
We need to give Fran a couple seconds here to get us ready.
Let me know, Fran.
Can you go ahead and read the caption, please?
I will. 7, section 551072, deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, and or value of real property, interest for property location at 113 Alice Street, Port Aransas, Texas, 78373, Morgan's lots 1 through 10, block 2, a portion of lots 5 and 6, block 1.
Okay, give me just a moment. I'm going to